All right. So, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Salam rahmatullah barakatuh.
So today, I have one of my bestie, Karen on the podcast, and it's not that Karen. And if she
Thank
becomes
you.
that Karen, she is always open to the discussion. So Karen, matter of fact, you could talk about your degree because I'm not really 100% like how your degree title is.
Okay, so my name is Karen Scheibel. I have a master in public health is my master's degree. So my background is in epidemiology and social epidemiology, like behavioral health focused. So basically, I'm just trying to get this camera right because it's like a weird angle and I'm not used to using my phone. Sorry, excuse me. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to not have to hold my phone in front of my face, but that's not going to work. Oh well. Okay, so um, my background is, like I said, in public health, and I got into the clinical side of things when I graduated from my program, and couldn't really find a position in the research area of my choosing. So I started working at the Wedge Recovery Centers doing as a counselor assistant, trying to figure out what I want to do next. And it turns out, oh my God, I love being a therapist. And so then I went for continuing education and continued to go with my education going in a different direction, more direct service rather than, the research end of it. And I got my CAADC in 2014. So I've been doing substance use dual diagnosis counseling for 11 years. And I definitely still use my public health degree. A lot of what I do at my one job, where I contract at Job Corps. So
Mhm.
I do what they call intervention and education for students that come in and test positive. They might not be addicts, they might not have any mental health issues, but it's about kind of teaching them about what predisposes them and factors that could put them at risk to kind of interrupt the process if it were to be going in that direction. So that's my background.
So basically, she's amazing. That's what she just said,
Oh,
all
okay.
summed up. But so today we're going to talk about free will. Because one of the things that, and the reason why I brought her on is because she's so much better at explaining the brain process better than I am. But basically, a lot of people don't exercise free will. We all think that we are operating and we choosing to do certain things when really it's just a set of behavioral patterns that we develop that we just continue to do over and over and over in different situations over and over and over again. And I know how to say it simplistic when it comes into as far as everyday life, but like how your brain lights up and what part of your brain is working and not working. I leave that to the public health person, and I just ask. So basically, we can start with like, how does like, what would you say, like, how does free will work, or like as
so
far as like how that goes?
so I'm going to get into that. And right now, my internet started working, so I'm entering the studio on my computer and closing out of
Okay.
this so that I can. I'm a hand talker, so like if I have to hold my phone, like I'm like, wait, what do I do? It kind of gets me like. Anyway, so let me just
Yeah,
I'm
that's
entering
fine.
the studio in that one. Okay. I'm hanging up on this one. Oh
Oh,
shit,
shit,
sorry.
sorry. Shit. I mean, what is going on?
That was weird.
Sorry. Yeah, it was like all weird echoey. I just was trying to hang up on that, and I was like,
Yeah, no, I took yours.
all right. So I'm back, and this is much better. So basically, the whole thing with free will, and what I like to phrase it as is that a lot of people confuse free will with conscious thought because there are different things that go on. Like, depending on your religious and spiritual beliefs, most people believe that, that we all have free will as human beings to make our choice, that we can do the right thing or the wrong thing. We can sin or we can choose the right path. Now, a lot of people mistake conscious thought, right? That we are exercising our free will when we're making choices, that we are basically conscious of all of our choices. So if a person says, people think that they act independently of what is going on in their subconscious mind. I guess would be the best way to put it. So if I were to be working with addicts, a lot of times what I hear is, well, I got high because I wanted to. Or I get high because I like it.
Right.
Uh-huh. Well, who likes it that much? That's what I want to know. Who likes it to the point of living in a ditch? I sure didn't. But just because we define something as what looks like a conscious choice, it looks like a conscious choice to say, well, I'm going to do that. And it is a conscious choice, but there are a lot of underlying beliefs that lead up to the decisions that we make that we're not conscious of. So what I say to people when they say that is like, okay, so you like getting high. Why? Because it's fun. Why is it fun? What's fun? So for fun, it could be relief for a person. They don't even realize that their decision is based on like, wow, this is an escape for me. They just label it as fun. But really what's going on is their subconscious drive to escape a certain feeling is really driving that train, and they call it fun. Well, another person would say, well, is it really fun, or is it just fun not to be in mental anguish? So that's an example. Another example is that people often believe that they are making decisions on conscious thought all the time. So they'll say, well, I chose to, I'm trying to use a good example. If anybody can think of a good example.
Think about the person that got PTSD.
Okay, this is good. So a person who has PTSD is acting on underlying beliefs that are trying to protect themselves. Okay, so they might say, should I go with the attachment things, Zyphira? You think? Should I talk about that?
Attachments is easier.
Yeah. So okay. So basically, if a person, and I'll start by describing a person who might think that they're making decisions based on conscious thought, they might say, well, I'm going to choose this partner, this person that I'm seeing or that I want to marry, and I feel like that I'm choosing them based on these qualities that I call love. Oh, well, they do X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z. I love them because they're this, this, and this, and this. Meanwhile, what really might be driving them is all the red flags that person's exhibiting without even realizing that that's what they're going towards. So they've done studies where if you have a woman who is like maybe raised with an abusive alcoholic father, she could be at a party with 200 people, okay? And then they could be on other sides of the room. But by the end of the night, they're talking and like magnets connected to each other. And then they start calling it chemistry. Oh my gosh, I've never been so in love. The chemistry. And I like to say the dysfunction. Oh my God, the dysfunction. Okay, because what it really comes down to is that between 0 and 6, so this is going to go back to how our brain is hardwired like a computer hard drive. Okay, so when you are between 0 and 6, you're developing your personality. Personality is developed between 0 and 6. There's a certain amount that we're born into the world with that are called traits. And in psychology, we call these the big 5. We talk about introversion, extroversion, neuroticism, narcissism, openness, to new experiences, conscientiousness, harm avoidance, or sensation seeking. So those are more than 5 because it's actually 2 sides to each of the coins. So that would be like 10, but it's really 5. So basically, those personality traits are like hair color. You get your DNA for your hair color, your height. So I got my mom's horrible teeth. Like I got soft teeth. They like, just prone to cavities. I got my dad's hair color, not my mom's. I got my dad's temperament in terms of risk taking. I like to experience new sensations, and that's not a bad thing. But you combine it with things like trauma and development, it's nature and nurture together. So you have the part that you're born with, then you have the part of your brain that's very, the oldest part of your brain. It's the reptilian part of your brain, which is your limbic system, which is basically where your dopamine receptors are and your fight and flight is. That's the pre-programmed part. That's the part where nobody needs to tell you when you see a bear in the woods to run.
Right.
You're just gonna run. Right. That's the part that's pre-programmed. And I call that the eat, sleep, and bleep part, because you literally don't need to be taught survival related things. Okay. So now you have your personality traits, basic survival things, and now we're going to go into the environment. So the environment that you're raised in between 0 and 6 is where your personality develops. And the personality interplays with your personality traits and the basic drive for survival and your temperaments. So when they talk about biopsychosocial development, that's what they're talking about. So when you have everything like that, you're going to now the hardest part of the sandwich, the pie, if you're breaking a pie, is the development part. So if between 0 and 6, you develop an insecure attachment, and there are different attachment styles. There's avoidant attachment, disorganized attachment, ambivalent attachment, and reactive attachment disorder, and then there's a secure attachment. Now, I don't believe that anybody has a perfectly secure attachment.
I don't either.
Because almost every person alive has experienced some type of trauma. But the degree to which the trauma you experience between 0 and 6 makes you feel not safe in the world is going to have a direct impact on the way your subconscious works and all the decisions you're making combined with your own biology to begin with in your traits. So the best way to put this is that every person, humans are social animals. We need one another to survive. So the only animals that aren't social animals are apex predators, like sharks. Think about it. They don't need a pack. But we are social animals. We are higher level animals. We have the ability to reason, but we still have the same functioning of needing other people. You cannot survive on this world alone. People need other people. We literally don't. Did you have something?
I was going to say, do you think that's culturally also? So there are some communities that are very communal, and then there's some ethnicities, like the Asian community, where they lean more toward survival of the fittest.
So there's an echo. We're all of us are echoing.
It's probably me.
Am I echoing?
All of us.
You're not.
Okay.
I am. I don't know why.
And I am too.
I know.
Karen's not.
I don't know.
No, it's I usually don't use this laptop.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was when you were describing the layers of social interaction, like those, because it sounds to me like you were talking about a theory I was just studying. Echo was killing me. It's the social ecological theory. That was called.
Yeah.
So that's what it sounds. That's what it sounds like you were talking about.
Exactly. Are you still getting an echo out there?
No.
Say something. Yeah, I'm getting one. Let me see if I go out.
I don't know. So if I can talk, do you want me to keep going? Because I don't know if they're going to log back in. So yes, exactly what you're talking about. That's the social ecological model, but it's actually like combined. So if you looked at the social ecological model, it's just so basically. Oh, is there an echo there right there?
What can you, isn't it?
No, I don't hear it now. Do you?
The reason that I came into my mind is
I see it. You're echoing.
I'm still doing it. All right, let me go out and come back.
Okay. You look so nice.
Thank you.
Let me see. Am I echoing?
Yes. Are you
Why are we echoing tonight?
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe if I
You
wonder
know
if
what?
it's my computer.
It might be you. Karen. Somebody,
Okay,
they
do you want me to log?
your computer's probably hearing it again.
So let me log out and then.
Okay, let me say something. All right, it's gone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's her. I think we can hear her
gone.
computer.
It's gone.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, it was hers.
Yeah, we hear it back. But I wanted to finish up because her question you were asking about.
Does that? Is there an echo now?
It's really with us. Nope.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. So Asia was asking about. It is still echoing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did it happen when I came in? It's me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I wish I could use my headphones, so I'm going to go out of here. Okay.
So we was asking. No, can you reframe your question because I want to make sure that it's what you were.
She confirmed it. She confirmed that it's the socio-ecological theory meshed with some other things. But what she described is exactly that. It's like 7 rings. It's like 7 rings, and it starts with the developmental stages, and it talks about that interaction between community, family, individuals, every domain, individuals, community, family, nations of people. And that's why I was asking, because we did this it was a psychological experiment where they were talking about multi-ethnicity, and they were talking about in different countries they are naturally communal, where in other countries they are not, and a lot of the Asian countries are not communal in a sense where you got to get yours and bring it to the table. Like, you know what I mean? I don't mean it like in a sense where they don't spend time together and they don't look out for each other, but you have to be bringing something to the table. And I'm gonna give you an example. When they come over, how they do business, they are not going to give the shot to a Black person. They're going to give it to someone within their community. So, but you got to be willing to bring something to the table to acquire that particular whatever that thing is.
Oh, but that's not what she was talking about when she was mentioning that we all need each other to survive. Even though we're individualistic, like us, we're an individualistic society. But let's just say, like, you yourself was put on an island. Eventually, you would die quicker than if you had other people there, even if it was an individualistic society. That's what she was talking about as far as.
No, I knew.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But that's so that's okay. So can you guys hear me? Am I echoing now?
Yes.
Am I echoing? No. So Asia, so exactly in the social ecological model, what you're describing is yes, different cultures would affect that interact and interplay with the basic level of social needs that we all have.
Yes.
So basically, what you're saying, it could amplify it.
So so I want to say this too, because we are also talking from a spiritual perspective. So we believe also as Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in us, that it is innate, inculcated in us to have the desire to want a human connection. So, looking at it I've always looked at it from a very spiritual perspective until going back to school, learning the formal, terminology or different models. So
let's say this. The best thing that I could say for everything is to deconstruct the models, because everything's saying the same thing. Okay.
Right.
Because science really says that, yes. And just like you were saying, in your spiritual practice, you believe that Allah puts it in us to work together, to be united, to want to connect, right? That is actually what oxytocin is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so the God of my understanding, and I'm like non-denominational spiritual, I'm not a hippie, but I like love God, but I don't practice any particular form of religion. But really what I say is that God made us so that we would make oxytocin, because we are meant to unify and be one. And that is the way we function. And no human being could actually survive alone. So people have tried it. People have tried it. But
yes, they have. And they failed.
And they failed, like that guy who did Into the Wild, who was like, oh, I'm going to take my whole trust fund. That rich kid who's like, I'm going to go live on a bus, in Alaska, because I don't need people. And I'm not making fun of him, but yeah, he died.
Right. Okay? They die horrible. Most people who do think that they can live without, number one, free will, since that's the topic,
Right.
and since that's the topic, then horrific things normally do happen to them on their journeys through life. It shows a deeper level of self-centeredness that's completely unaddressed for whatever reason, that they decide that they can be in this world alone. It can be from the distorted thinking of the mental health, whatever, or the substance, whatever, or the whatever co-occurring problem, medical to whatever, lack of whatever. It doesn't matter. That particular person definitely has an issue with the topic that we're talking about, free will.
Right. Well, they have an attachment disorder.
I would agree.
Because really what's happening there, and sorry to interrupt you, but this goes to my next train of thought, because I really feel like this is going in the right direction. I'll lose my train of thought, because you're absolutely right. There's something that happens there that isn't working, because no human being really would want to stray from the pack. They wouldn't. Correct. Okay, unless there's something wrong. And this goes back to the 0 to 6, but also fits in with the ecological model, because the ecological model takes the environment into play with our internal biology. Okay, so it's all coming together, and to me it's spiritual too, because there's a oneness of humans. So and that is cultured in us, like you said, or indoctrinated into, because literally that's what oxytocin is. It is the bonding hormone. So what happens is, if you looked at like a bunch of gazelles. I love the gazelles. I usually draw them on a whiteboard, and I draw a bunch of gazelles, and I'm like, so the gazelles are running down the Sahara, right? Now, what happens to the one that's all the way back here? Say there's 5 up here. What happens to the one that's all the way back there?
He isolates. He on his own. He on his own.
He gets 8. He is snatched up.
He ain't with the herd. He ain't protected.
Guess what? His little heart is going boom, boom, boom. He is scared to death. Okay, he's scared to death,
traumatized.
Even though he's not on a conscious level saying, "I'm going to die because I'm 5 yards behind the pack," his brain, and the part of the brain that's wired for survival, says, I am in danger. I am not protected. And literally, that's what happens in human development. So they studied Romanian babies in orphanages that weren't touched by other humans and weren't cared for. Okay. And what they ended up doing, I see it. They ended up going like this, hitting their head, banging their heads. Okay. They develop self-destructive behaviors. And what they have found in almost every animal species is that if a member of that pack does not feel part of what, they turn self-destructive too. So Romanian babies might bang their head against the crib, but you know what they found in primates Like chimpanzees, they chew off their hands. Rabbits pluck out their fur, their own fur.
Yep.
Birds will pluck out their own feathers. That it's because literally what happens is that you fear for your life. And when guess what happens when you fear for your life? That's post-traumatic stress. You have extreme levels of anxiety. And what does the brain do when it's anxious? It does things in obsessive compulsive manner to
Mm-hmm.
try to calm itself, because the
Mm-hmm.
brain's response to anxiety is to literally like do things obsessively and compulsively. It's like a survival mode, but it's self-destructive. It's not productive. So
So,
what
yeah.
ends up happening is that you end up self-destructing. So whether it's obsessing and compulsing over drugs, whether it's self-mutilation, whether no matter what it is, the behavior is going to be repetitive and damaging. And what you see in adults, so those Romanian babies, what they grow up with is reactive attachment
Yep.
disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then they can even exhibit some sociopathy. They can, but the people that go into the wild, like dude who bought that bus and went into the wild and like this tragic end, is probably most likely has an ambivalent or avoidant attachment style. Maybe
Oh, I'm
not to the
sure.
you,
Oh,
you
I'm
know.
sure.
Yeah,
I'm
and that
sure.
is what you were saying, and that's why I like what you were saying is because there's nobody who's going to go off and do that unless they have attachment difficulties. Now,
Mm-hmm.
most people have attachment difficulties, but they think they're making their own decision from their free will.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, it's their attachment disorder making
Mm.
it. So they're like, I don't need anybody. I'm a lone wolf. I'm going to go out here and survive, and they really truly believe they're making that decision of their own free will, that they're making it because that's the way they feel now, that it has nothing to do with anything else. Meanwhile, it has everything to do
With
with the
everything
development,
else.
everything else.
With everything else, include everything else. I found this wonderful article from these scholars at New York University, and they talk about the divine decree of free will in regards to Muslims.
Yep.
In regards to Muslims, and they talk about this being because for Muslims, it's like this whole test. And you started off saying, Karen, that it was this would be like general thinking in terms of
Mm-hmm.
free will. And then you went, the way that you went. But for most, I'm going to say us Muslims, that
Mm-hmm.
free will, therefore, is it's like human beings, and that we have to make these decisions based on what we think, number one, is going to get us into Jannah,
Mm-hmm.
going, and what we believe that the Quran and Hadith and everything that we study teaches us, that this is the right thing to do, regardless if we feel that we're being free when making this decision or not. And you're
Right.
going, but you went all the way in deep from the very beginning. You just went, I'm the secular girl on the show, just so you know. I'm your
Oh.
secular girl. I'm the one that
Which
reads
is
all the articles, and that's what
which
I
is
Uh-huh.
bring,
it's,
Right.
to this particular platform. And I'll read tons and tons of articles, and I'll dissect it and break it down, and I'll bring it to the show, and we'll say whatever it is that that needs to be done. But I brought this up because you just went all the way in to straight psychological and emotional and all of this stuff way before we can talk about the basics of what Kanan says about free will. And you kind of like went right past it. I was like, whoa, she just jumping right in. She's a beast. Like, and you said she would be like this. So, and I think it was good that you brought her on as a guest. That was great.
oh,
Because the
Say
thing
that.
is, and I'm glad that you brought that up, is because even when people use like so in I can just say it in so I'm a recovering addict. I have 15 years, and one of the things that's big in the NA program is God's will, not mine, be done. So I have free will. So deciding what's my will versus what's God's will, okay, is huge. And for me, like, I'm very faithful in a non-denominational way. I was raised Catholic, but I kind of want to do my will. I know my will isn't the best will, but
Yeah.
but so I got to pray to take for God to take my will, because I have free will, so that I can follow God's will. Now, like you said, that's one thing. But when you think even that you're making a decision with your mind, when your mind has been literally formed and your personality has been developed, the traits that you were even born with from your ancestors, because they're trauma, they found the DNA that literally is intergenerational.
Absolutely.
So the decisions you think that you're making
Come on,
are
you
not
better spit
really
that spit out, spit it on out, spit it on out. Absolutely.
And that's the thing is that that's why some people will say, I'm doing the right thing because this is my spiritual belief, and even use like spiritual gaslighting and literally manipulation without even sometimes knowing they're doing it, because they're
in
being
the moment they think they're in control, they're completely out of control.
Out of control.
Can I jump in real quick? First of all, let's differentiate religion and spirituality, two different things.
Two different things.
Religion is the formality of what we do, the routine of what we do. Spirituality is that thing, that desire that God put in us to want something higher than, deeper than ourselves.
Yes.
One of the things coming from an Islamic perspective is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the Malaika where they hear and they obey. The Malaika are angels. And human beings, and I agree with you, we do. So it was put in us to have the right to choose. But this is the thing that I feel, like you just said, that human beings didn't factor in from the very beginning, that predisposed genetic situation that happens with historical trauma or transgenerational, which is interchangeable with, intergenerational trauma. So all of those factors play a role, because I wanted to talk about this experiment that I read about. So the compact was created in Egypt before we was even thought about. It was when Egypt was called Kemet, and the computer, and there were other things that were created. So bringing it up to modern day, everybody thought it was this new thing, and then they went to Egypt and dug up some of the how they, what do you call it? They did some excavating and dug up artifacts and realized
archaeological stuff.
Right. And realized that some things we are just recalling to mind. They were already created. They were already here. We are just recalling those things to mind. And you had spoke about that I don't know what you called it. I think you called it a genetic trait or something. But
disposition.
Disposition. So this knowledge has been handed down through DNA. You know what I mean? Or somehow, however you described it, being placed in the mind. So it's not so we learn that there's nothing new under the sun. We learn that whatever is going to be, it's filtered through the generations. You also talked about the babies in Russia. One of the things I also read an article on, and it was talking about, because you're talking about that detachment thing. Not only do people become self-destructive, but they were talking about how they become, I don't want to call it sociopaths.
Yes.
Let's talk
about part of reactive attachment disorder. Actually is where the sociopathy comes in, and the antisocial stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yep.
But the intergenerational trauma is interesting. What they found is that in your DNA. So say if your grandmother, I hate to say it, was mugged and assaulted in a lilac patch. Okay.
She wasn't in a lilac patch.
I know what you're going to say.
But you're real close. You're real close. It wasn't the lilac patch.
Okay, but right. So, and if that what happens is that, do you know that DNA, that it can be literally, it's encoded, and that her ancestors may, and it could be different triggers, could smell lilac and not know why they can't stand that smell.
Yes.
And they're just people have thought that for years, but science is just coming to the point where they're really understanding how much is coded in our DNA that is way beyond our height.
But bring me the milk so I can make sure it's good.
I agree.
It's so much more.
Yeah, that ties into the invisible loyalty. You heard about invisible loyalty? You heard about that before when it comes to like the mother having DNA and things like that. Oh yeah, it was you and I think we were at Gardenzia when we first got that concept of invisible loyalty. when it comes to DNA and doing things like your grandmother's mother did, like way down the line.
Yeah.
I recently told a family member, my actual only offspring, that, you know, I did more than smoke marijuana at your age. And so be very careful, because that disposition, that switch is going to go off. I said this literally. The advancement came in my mid 30s. Your switch is going to go off and you will want something else. So please be mindful.
But taking it deeper with that transgenerational component, like just taking it deeper. That's my research that I'm working on now. And
that's great.
That's
nice. So we talk about this every week, ladies. Stop acting like it's a surprise. I talk about it every week.
No, but no.
Every week. She's not here every week.
Wait,
I know, but you too know.
No, but I see it. And every time you say it, I don't know, the education and the intelligence of all of us. Every week it just makes me happy. So I don't care how many times you say it, but I look at that. I say it, like every time I don't like it. It never gets old to me, and because I just feel like it's something that people need to hear, and sometimes you need to drill it into their brain and hammer it down. And so, yes, say it every single week, because we got a million people over here that need to hear it.
And it's hope for people. Besides that, it's hope for people. Period.
But I talk about it, and again, I speak about it continuously, because there's been no studies. The gaps in the literature do not suggest that there have been any studies solely for people of color post-slavery. There are no studies. There's been no platform to have this discussion collectively in this patriarchal, racist society. So,
and absolutely not, because you know what that would prove too? That would prove that if intergenerational trauma from slavery is existing in the DNA of the African Americans who live here today, like all three of you or anybody else who's listening, that would also mean the sadistic traits of white people.
That's right.
And that's why the discussion is not happening. And let me say that. And that's why the discussion is not happening, because they do not want to own. So right now is a lot of white guilt going on, and white people do not want to own the role of their ancestors, because it means that they got to take on the accountability, even though they didn't do it, of their ancestors. One of the things about this transgeneration
today, they also have to answer that it might still be in them today, because just like the trauma,
it's definitely in them,
and then you can see the sadism, and then it's perpetuated by the white supremacist patriarchy. So that
absolutely about what we see, like what we saw, what happened on the White House steps. That part.
No, how about what
we're not talking about that today. I don't want to get off topic. 1% at a time. 1%. I don't want to get off topic, but yeah, like those behaviors we saw on the White House.
But I agree with you, sister. I agree with you.
I don't want to get too much off topic, because we got so much information.
But you see why I love Karin? This is my baby girl. Okay.
Oh yeah, she's a baby.
You know, Karin, also, and I'm sorry, because I know we real short on time. Also, one of the things I was thinking about was, and it just left my senior brain. I'm sorry. It was about the transference ghosts. It says in the literature, it speaks about how we feel like we living with ghosts. Like, and I'm gonna give you an example. One time, my son did something that he never saw his father do. It's something that his father would do in the privacy of the boudoir. So when he did it, like I was just like, and it wasn't anything weird. It was just how he scratched his ankle with the back of his toes. You know, he's a kid, and he never saw his dad do that. You know what I mean? And just some of the things that I see from my children that, and even as adults, that they never saw, you know what I mean? But I see them demonstrate these traits. This, I don't know if it's predisposition.
I think it's probably there's things that it can be, and it can be encoded in their DNA, because it's whose ever grandfather, father scratched his ankle like that, just like the lavender can be in one's DNA, that same thing. And you know, they've done studies on like
different. There's birds like really adapt, and I guess there were these birds in Australia that figured out how to get like these treats from inside a mailbox or some crazy, I don't even know, don't quote me on it, but one bird taught another bird, and then once enough birds knew, like tons of birds that wouldn't even be close to them would do it. So there's collective, sometimes there's an
sorry,
even collective. Minute yourself. Go ahead.
Who, me?
No, that was me. I'm up here trying to myself.
So collective consciousness, even, you know what I'm saying? So that's an interesting angle. But the one thing that's really big is that when people don't realize how much that they're bringing to their decisions and then calling it free will, when they could literally be bringing not only their own, but generations before them.
And I agree. And I think that's why it's so difficult to break generational cycles. I agree with that.
Oh yeah, you're big on that. You're big on that.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so difficult. And in my mind, how I was raised, I wanted to break that generational cycle. There were some things that I felt that I would like to do different. But I found that after having children, it was not as simple as that.
I don't even have kids, but I already know that. But
it wasn't as simple as that. And it had to be a combination of things. It had to be education, it had to be the spiritual component, and it had to be discipline for me. It had to be also me getting to know who I was, and not identifying, because a lot of times we identify with, our conditioning, of course. And we think that it's normal, especially in Black families, because it's not therapy is not something that's promoted. It's not well-being. Is not really something that's discussed. Is off to the next speakeasy or next party. This is because I'm older, so this is the generation I've come from, where like my grandmother had a speakeasy, like, and kids were to be seen and not heard. If your face was crumpled up for whatever reason, it was not a gentle parenting conversation. It was, you got an attitude, fix your face.
Oh, you don't like that? I'll give you something to cry about.
Right. Yes.
Well, you are picking it off the floor. You want to pick your face off the floor?
Yeah. Oh, wait, you bored? I got some stuff to do.
Right.
Yup.
Listen, my grandmother used to say, "You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry for, because I'm gonna tie some fire to your ass." That's what my grandmother was saying. She was gonna tie fire to it, And for me,
I believed it too. Didn't you believe it?
Oh, honey, we picked our own switches. So I think that component comes from that punitive piece. Definitely comes from slavery. So that predisposition, disposition alone, I feel, is one of the damaging things. And I'm gonna just say people of color, because I'm also discovering too that it's not just Black people. Black people may have had the worst of it, but it's not just solely Black people. As I build this practice, I'm discovering that, again, I am counseling people from Bangladesh, from different parts of the world, and the story is the same. The story.
And the thing about corporal punishment. So I was raised with beatings, but not like my parents were. So my mom was beat severely, and that was normal in her house, right? And so her way to change it, and this is where intergenerational stuff can take a turn. Her attempt to change it how hard I realize it is. I'm not a parent, but what I realized as an adult was, okay, a lot of things that happened in my childhood, DHS would have been called. Okay.
Right.
Like I was scared of the escalators, right? Escalators, I thought they were going to eat me. My mom would be like, no, you got to do this. We're J.C. Penney, and there's like a escalator that goes over 2 stories, the ones that look like they're floating in the air.
Yeah.
I'm 6 years old. I'm screaming and crying because I can't. My mom's like, oh, they're at the bottom. My sisters, my grandma, my grandpa, my mom. They're like, okay, bye, Karin. And they like leave out, but they're hiding behind racks. I don't know that. Somebody would have called DHS, but like back then, it was the 70s. You could do that,
Wow.
But to my mom, that was way better than hitting me.
Doing anything else. Yeah, doing anything else.
And she wanted to make strong, independent women that were able to never be in a situation where they felt trapped.
Can't get themselves out.
Right. So she was like, I was like 5 or 6 years old. She's like, Karin, make yourself a doctor's appointment. Call Dr. Brown. I'll never forget Dr. Brown because that was the first number I ever called. I was like, hey. Now that's not age appropriate,
Right.
But that was her idea of making self-sufficient females. She had 4 girls.
They only did what they knew. They did what they
only
knew.
did what they knew, and she did better than the previous generation. But
And
that's
what
why
it was all about.
Asia was saying it's not as easy as it looks. But all anybody can hope for is to just do better. And it's not as if to blame the people that came before us. It's just like all we can do is do a little better. If
I blamed them, man. I blamed all of them. I blamed all of them. They chastised me. They abused me. They did all that kind of stuff. I ended up smoking crack, going to jail, doing all kinds of crazy. It was everybody's fault that I went through everything that I went through.
I did not. I was the opposite. I internalized it, and it was my fault. And these things were my fault. So I internalized it. So if someone hurt me, I hurt myself.
But I didn't do that. I didn't get honest until step work. Only until after I got clean and step work.
But I'm talking about from that. When you in Black families, we look at our parents. If they got a house and they doing well, we look at them as giants. We look at them like, you know what I mean? And even the ones that don't really do well, we look at them as if they are just above God. And it is hard to see them as human and fallible. It is hard to sometimes see your parent as human and fallible.
Yes. Like I was my first few years in therapy, they would ask me, my therapist, and when I was in treatment would say, well, tell me about your family. I'd be like, my family's perfect. I would say it with a straight face and be like, well, I mean, tell me a little about your mom. Don't you talk about my mom? Okay. Now,
right.
I had a lot of resentment.
You know what, Karin? I was gonna say, you know what I started doing? I ask people now, tell me about the most influential person in your life. Because it does not necessarily have to be the parent. And when they begin to tell me about the person that influenced them the most, then I know what it is. You know what I mean? Then I kind of got an idea. Okay, this is what we're working with. Because a lot of times it's the most influential person in your life that conditions you to be who you become.
That is so smart.
That's correct. That's really good. That's a good approach. I like that approach.
So just let Zafira know that. I know you heard that, sister.
What? Influential people. I admire all y'all ladies. Like, y'all all teach me something.
No, not you. We were talking about our style of therapies.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying like how I admire your stuff. Because even like sometimes, like one time, I overheard one of Asia's sessions.
All right.
And I was like,
and they was getting the business to sell them.
And they was, but and that's not my style. But I can see different personalities where that's what's needed.
Right. Well, so even getting back to the way the mind works. I had a session with a couple last night, and I already told you this. I said, so there's one. They're a couple. They haven't had relations in over 2 years. He is a recovering alcoholic. He's been sober a year, but he says, well, I don't know how to initiate, sex because it's been so long. And then he starts going to, and I found an old sex tape of hers, which was years ago. They weren't together. And he uses that as an excuse. And truly in his mind, it might pop up. And he had the nerve to say, and this goes into the unconscious and subconscious, he had the nerve to look at me and say, yeah, I feel like I've done a lot of hard things, but this tape is the hardest thing I've ever had to get over.
Oh my goodness, really?
Listen, he literally said,
that's hilarious.
He said, it was easier to get sober because that made sense to me because I knew when I went in there, drinking was ruining my life. So I had to do that. So I already knew. So that was easier than this. And I said, excuse me, sir. I said, let me draw a diagram. I took out the whiteboard. I said, now imagine addiction and I drew a stick figure with blood pouring out his head. I said, imagine that blood is your addiction. And it's hurting everybody, like you said. So you got to stop bleeding. Because everybody's like, I don't need all those pathogens. Get all your pathogens off me. I don't want your pathogens, spraying all over me. So you got to stop the bleeding because that's, the addiction, say that's
Absolutely.
the analogy. So he says, yeah, so you got to stop the hole. I said, okay. So I draw a plug in the hole and it stops. Okay. And and then I said, we're going to stop there. And I said, now, what is it that when you think of that tape that makes you upset, right? He says,
Hello.
well, I feel like I won't be able to please her, and it makes me scared. And it makes me think of that tape because it makes me think that all these other men might have pleased her before me, and that I will not live up, and that I will fail in this attempt. And I don't know how to start something without knowing that the end result is going to be good. So then I went back to the picture
Okay.
and I said, okay, so now you've plugged up the hole. But what if the hole is necrotizing fasciitis in your brain or flesh eating amoeba? Okay. And it's just going to keep on eating and pop that hole right back out and you're going to bleed because that thinking, that lack of faith,
Go
okay,
ahead.
that
That's good.
even if it doesn't work out like you want it to, that you will be okay, doesn't
Mhm.
exist in him because of his trauma. He never felt safe in the world and he wants to change the outcome. What does that sound like? That sounds like an addict to me. They literally, and anybody else who's afraid of alcohol, which is every human, but it represents itself differently. For him, it's alcoholism. But the whole point is that he literally, just like most people, think that they are only acting on their conscious thoughts. He literally thought, like, I consciously am afraid of that, so that's what I'm really afraid of. It's not about that instance. It's like a total pervasive lack of faith that he has a performance based idea that everything he has to do, he has to know the outcome and that he'll get an A on it and that he'll be good,
Yeah.
and,
So he wants
you know,
absolution. He's looking for absolution.
exactly. He's looking for absolution
He
because
ain't
of his
gonna get
early
it.
trauma, and he's not going to get it. And he
He
needs
ain't
to
gonna get
develop
it.
faith, but he needs to first understand that his conscious thought isn't what's really driving his behavior. It's the subconscious need for absolution that is driving all of his decisions, and that all comes from that development, that ecological model, that it all intergenerational, that's all coming into play. So when people just think that the decision that they're making or the way that they're thinking is because what is consciously there, they're sadly mistaken because actually only 10% of all our behavior and all our choices is based on conscious thought. 90% of everything we do, down to the people we choose, is based on subconscious underlying beliefs that are so
Hold on.
tightly held that unless you literally question every conscious decision you make, and that's the whole point even of like therapy and recovery, is to literally understand why we do what we do, not just take for face value, well,
Yeah.
because I thought it, that's why I did it.
I
Well,
was
that
going to
thought
say
might be
that,
a
Karen.
defense mechanism.
I was going to say that unless you begin to, and we're going to say it simple, learn you. Unless you begin to, um,
Unpack.
for me, I took I wanted to take my education a step deeper in reference to, like, I thought I was going to go to school for human services and that was going to be it. And then I began to listen to things where it was talking about why Black people don't live longer, why they die faster, why they develop cancer, why they develop high blood pressure, things of that nature. And the things that are indigenous to us, we don't have access to. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yep.
We don't have
Yep.
access to it. I
Of
can't go
course.
outside and get some, because we are root people, so to speak. Like
Mm-hmm.
the medicines that we use, I'm talking about from Kemet, ancient Africa. We don't have access to that, where other cultures have access to what their indigenous
For
thing
their
might be.
systems.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so by us not being,
Longevity.
huh?
For longevity.
And overall well-being. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah. And then on
Overall,
top of And then on top of that, you put a healthcare system that literally like wants to
yes.
annihilate Black women because
Ooh,
literally,
they want us
Yeah,
out. Get rid of them.
doctors are to Black women like police are to Black men.
Hmm.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. I agree. That's a great one. That's really good.
I agree with that. But
I
I
do too.
also, because we talk about free will, everybody here on this podcast is participating in some level of education, some higher than others. So collectively at this juncture, and because Black women or women of color are going back to school, getting educated at a higher rate, because we always talk about this all the time, Zai, about that connection, about networking, about it can't just be one person over here and one person over here. It got to be a culmination of ideas, you know, and people making this happen. It can't just be people of color. It got to be multi-ethnicities to force this conversation so that some of these issues can definitely be addressed. And it can't be the ancestors of Susan B. Anthony who would probably say in this day and age, I can't make, yeah, we're feminists, we're white feminists. Right. I can't make my issues your issues, you know? So it can't be not those ancestors, because we're talking about predisposition, but
exactly.
It has to be people with the same mindset that something definitely has to change and all life is valuable. I'm not coming at stuff looking at it from a perspective of a woman of color. I'm looking at it, I'm a mother. I was honored to bring life into the world. I want to preserve life. So I want to make changes in legislation and social policy because my seed has to live in this world when I'm long gone.
And theirs too. And theirs too.
But see, but white women.
And theirs too.
But white women, unfortunately, so you're looking at it like, because you're a mother more than everything. Like you're not looking at the racial part of it is because you, I guess what unfortunately what has happened, I believe, is that the patriarchy. So you know how the crap rolls down, as they say. Okay, so white women benefited from white supremacy. They didn't benefit from patriarchy. So, but they wanted to keep their benefits of white supremacy, right? And so they didn't value Black women; they just valued white women. So the standard white feminism doesn't serve all women; it only serves white women. And but that discussion, unfortunately, makes some people who are very fragile, that white fragility thing, shut down instead of like being like, no, like we need to listen.
But I want to tell you this: the reason that I can't look at it from just my perspective as a Black woman is because the law created variety, and He values all life, and we make the distinction with color. Is one race, and that's a human race. So by all means, I recognize that this person might be not of the same ethnicity, but right now that ain't a priority to me. The priority is, and this is what I see, they bombing people all over the place. They don't care if you white, black, green, purple, blue. The people over in
no, they care if you're green. They care if you're green.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, because that's
yeah, right. So I say that to say there is a
I get to pay dollar bills all over me.
Yeah, right. There is a devaluing of life.
Oh yeah,
and it's not going to stay contained. It's not going to just stay with Black people and people of color. It's going to affect everybody on this planet. And that's why you have these white supremacy groups, because they think they dying out. They believe in the theory. What is it called? Replacement. What do they call it? Replacement. What is it called?
I know what you're talking about. Because I know exactly. My senior brain.
They think that I want to say it's called replacement theory, but I know that's not it. But anyway, they believe.
I know what you're.
That by 2050 it ain't gonna be no white folks, which we know that ain't the case by law's permission. If we even all still here, but they believe that the multi-ethnic groups are going to take over and white people will no longer exist.
Right, and that, but from their ancestors. So like this is the thing, intergenerationally, I think that those people who have that in them have that fear from their ancestors that were always afraid that, you know, the slaves will overtake them, as they should have been afraid. You know what I'm like? I feel like it's a lot of factors. It's the indoctrination of white supremacy, but then you have intergenerational stuff, and that's why if it's not addressed like head on.
But can I say something too, Karen? It's not just white people. Let's be real clear. You have in Africa during that time that we're talking about when it was called Kemet, the Black country, you had Arabs, you had white, you had the Romans, you had European,
Asian
over, and so Black people were attacked from all fronts because of where they lived and what they had.
What they had.
That's the point.
Resources.
So they were attacked from all fronts because of what they had. So we can't just simply say it's just that the European folks had a little more firepower and a little more wherewithal, you know, when they came to attack.
No,
Most
you know
people,
what? No, you know what? I would even go deeper. I feel like it was more savagery, like
Yeah.
the ability to go farther
Evil.
than anybody else will go to
With the
overtake.
evil.
Yeah,
but
you know,
when you are dealing with a people that are trusting just from the rip, when you're dealing with a culture that is just trusting African people, because listen, it's like people that smoke crack. When white people come in the hood to get crack, somebody got to tell them where the crack house is, right? So in Africa,
Absolutely.
somebody had to tell them where the villages were.
Right.
They didn't
Right.
just, you know what I'm saying? So somebody
Yeah.
had to tell them who was what, who was running it, and where the villages were, and what was attractive to,
Correct.
to these type of people. And by
Correct.
the way, savagery is not what people think it is. Savagery are actually people that are quite organized. But we ain't gonna talk about that.
no, no, I'm not
But
talking
you
about
were
the
right
organization, but I'm
about
talking about the
the
mentality of the
brutality.
ability.
The
Yeah.
brutality.
The brutality of it.
and
The
you were right
capacity.
about when you said the about replacement. It is the replacement theory.
Okay.
That's the concept. That's what you were trying to get
So
to.
they so they
So
feel like
That's
they're gonna,
exactly what it is.
And it's so funny with replacement theory because people, I'll hear, you hear people talk about that, and it's like, how are you even afraid of that? Because why is that so bad? Like, to me, I'm like, why is this so, like, to me, even if literally, like, world was Mexican tomorrow, or African American tomorrow, or Indian, to me, it's like,
Right.
I don't know. People like I don't know, but some people they feel so threatened, and I do wonder if that's the intergenerational like,
I think so. Because here's
and
the thing: is enough seats at the table for everybody, and guess what?
right.
You can get a leaf and extend the table. And for those who don't know what a leaf is, it's a table extender, young folks.
I
Right,
know.
smack it in the middle, extend the table, smack it in the middle, extend the table.
Or we can just.
I feel some kind of way because I didn't know that. I just like learned it like just a second.
I got you, Mama. I got you.
Oh my God, we had
my mom had
dining
6
room
kids,
tables.
so she had 6 kids, but she only had
Yep.
room in the dining room for 4. So she would take the extended and put it on top, move the living room, move the table to the dining room. I mean the living room,
Pull
and
it out.
open it up, and we'd all be able to sit. Right. Yeah.
So
That's
do you
that's the
think?
only way I do.
So in concluding this, one of the things that I love is our struggle made us resourceful. It made us resilient. It made us strong. It made us innovators. And all of these new things that people think are just new under the sun is nothing new under the sun. It was going on, before Africa was called Africa, because it wasn't really. It was called the Black It was called something else. It wasn't called Africa. Roman folks named it. It was a colony called Afrique, and they named the whole continent Africa. But to sum it all up, I feel again that those things that are innate, I think that, and this is from my experience, that you definitely could work on them to change them. And I feel like it's a gradual process. I feel like each generation can get better with it. Like I see how my daughter is with her children, as a compared to how I was with her. And I see that she definitely does some gentle parenting, and she will pull out all the resources. And it ain't just about I'm gonna tear a behind up, Zai. And I see her doing it different, and that makes me very proud, and it makes me hopeful, because hopefully her children will understand that there are other ways of handling a situation and developing new coping tools, as opposed to those ghosts that those transgenerational trauma ghosts that they carry, that make them feel disemboweled, that make them feel separate from everything, because they're saying that these, and I don't know, I know I carry some, but hopefully they'll do something different, and they'll break the cycles, and they'll continue to I'm gonna say to strengthen that new way of reframing things. That's
Yeah.
the way to put it.
So it's like a few things that I always do. One, I question every kind of behaviors that I have. I question everything, like why am I doing something? But two, I also remind myself I can be whatever it is that I want to be every single day. So if I want to be kind and I want to be nice, I can be there. If I want to be assertive, I can be there, because we become what we tell ourselves also.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I've come to do is I am assertive and I'm kind, and you can't take that away from me. I believe that's who I am. I'll give you the shirt off my back, but I'll also tell you where to buy shirts at.
Yep.
So My thing is, you ask yourself that question, and our famous saying as therapists, if it affects you, it is about you. So if you feeling some kind of way about something, you need to look inward. Like, why is that affecting me? I was telling you, the analogy that I always like to use is that I can slap 4 different people and everybody respond the same. Their response is on them. It's who they are. The slap is just the stimuli. This doesn't make me wrong for slapping them. I like slapping people, but but me slapping them is still wrong. But you got to be accountable for the behavior that you chose to do, whether
Right.
that was
And why
or
you
whether that
chose
was
to do that. And why you chose to do that. Because that's a lot of what people don't understand. So I like reactivity. Like, I like talking about reactivity. So I was the type of person, you looked at me wrong. This is me. You looked at me wrong. Oh, what you look at? Like, really? Like, what? Like, okay, I'm reading the mind. Oh, she's looking at me like this because she's disrespecting me. Like, immediately. Now, what I realized for me was that when I stopped thinking about why do I react that way, so I could tell myself a different story, because I was reacting that way because trauma literally made me feel like, well, never again. I'm not going to feel that way again. Meanwhile, over here, I'm under boundary as hell. Okay. So not understanding why I'm over boundary in this area. So then when finally I was like, oh, wait, this is like an effectual trigger. She's looking at me. I feel like, not today. But wait, that's nothing about her. I came up with my own internal dialogue, which is, basically, Karin, that is from the past. Got nothing to do with her. Leave the poor girl alone.
And most of the time when I do that, I'm acting out fear.
No,
it's because I'm fearful of something.
No, but you know what, Karin, because will be a good story too. Is remember the story that you told me about the first time I called you, which is how conscious work. Yes, I feel like that's a great story.
So I was so the first time Za called me outside of work, I'll never forget. I was at Nordstrom Rack and I was in the shoe department, and she was calling me. She was talking, and I'm like, oh man, this girl's calling me. I'm like happy she's calling me, but I'm like, this is awkward. Now I have an avoidant attachment style, so I would avoid highly reactive, but more like to the type that like, I'm going to think that you're going to fuck me over. Okay. So I'm going to not be, no matter what, romantic or friendships. So I've been trying to practice not shutting down like that. And so is my conscious brain.
This sounds familiar, but go on.
Yeah. And I mean, I had a similar story. The first time I was trying to make friends, I was like 34 years old, and Sula, Sula, so Sula, she said, you want to go out for your birthday? I said, yeah. Then she calls on my birthday. She's like, I have to cancel. And I was like, see, I knew this. I knew she was I knew it, right? And I don't want to wash my mouth around all these faithful people. So anyway, so I said, she's playing me. And I took a night off of work, and I was working at tips at that time. I was like, oh, now she's messing with my money. So I get ready to walk over there and fight her, I go over there, and I'm like, boom, boom, boom. She opens the door, and then I remember what my therapist told me, and I was like, you hurt my feelings, right? And she's like, oh, and I was like, I can't even believe it. I cried in front of somebody. This was my first stories about making a friend. And she's like, oh, I just couldn't go because my brother's schizophrenic and they're trying to commit him. He thinks I'm the devil, so I can't go up there, but I got to be ready to go to the hospital at any minute. But my friend's got to do. Yeah. Anyway, I was like, oh, it isn't about me. Duh. Anyway, so we became friends. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, but the same thing with Zah saying, I had to talk through it with myself, because she's on the phone, she's talking to me, and I'm like, I want to hang up so bad right now. But not because I didn't want to talk to her, but because the part of me that keeps me to me to be safe made me want to hang up. And I just kept on saying, don't hang up, Karin. Don't hang up, Karin. And it's funny because I stayed on the phone, and I told Zai, I think I told you later, I'm like so glad, because at this point, by the time we're talking like every day for 3 months. And I said to her, I'm so glad you called me, because I connected with Zai right away, but I wasn't at the point where I would just probably be like, even though we exchanged numbers, call her. Yeah. And for me, the biggest challenge was not going with my subconscious fear and just staying on the phone. but it was because of her and where she's come in her life and reaching out to me. And this is the beauty of when people work on themselves, like what can
That's
happen. Because
right.
I know we'll be friends for life. Like you can't listen, you have
So
to,
you can't die.
yeah, till we die. That's it.
Right. That's awesome.
I can relate
Good
to that.
stuff.
And
That's
that
good
that
stuff.
what you were talking about, Karen, I definitely can relate to that. That's not me, but I know I've been around people that are that way, that avoidance piece. And because of what I've been through, I take it personal,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
one of the things I am learning is one of the things I've learned about myself is, and it's really difficult to explain to a person, I feel very deeply about everything. I feel very deeply. Yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
this weekend, I didn't act favorable to my Lord, and it literally made me physically ill. When, we folks like us that are in recovery, the fourth step for me, I took that to my heart and soul. You know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
moral inventory of every day, all day, every day. So I feel very deeply about the decisions that I make and the way I treat people. I feel that way because I know what it's like for someone to mistreat you when your intentions are pure. So I'm
Yep.
always so I'm very critical and hard on myself, and I had to talk myself through that. Like, I had to learn that this is not your stuff. This is their stuff, and you got to stop carrying other people's stuff. Because
Mhm.
see, I love to pick up other people's bricks. I love to pack them away in my bag, and I want to fix the whole world.
Lug them all
And
around.
But
mhm,
that's partly though too, and this is what I love about step four, because the step four to me is literally psychodynamic work. It's cognitive behavioral and psychodynamic, because literally when you make a fears list and you say, okay, well, why do I shut down? Or why some people who have, indiscriminate sex, they might be like, why do I do that? I'm hurting people, love them and leave them. Why do I do that? What am I afraid
I
of? You're
did
afraid
that.
of you're afraid of intimacy. You're right. So like it's always the fears, and the fears that drive. If we act on our fears, we hurt ourselves and
Listen,
we hurt other people. That's it. So the subconscious, the step four is all about bringing that subconscious up. Instead of saying I do this because I do this, it's I do this because these are the underlying beliefs
Mhm.
in the car.
you know, one of the things, Elisa, you could bear witness to this. One of the things that I learned when I worked at Gardenzia on an all male floor was to look beneath the surface. As a person
Yeah.
of, and I'm saying why it's significant to me because I am a victim of trauma,
Mhm.
sexual trauma. So I'm going to work on an all male floor. I'm going to be there from 4 p.m. until 12 p.m. by myself.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to look beneath the surface of who they were, not just, okay, I'm reading your jacket, this is what it say about you. I had to see them. And when I say
Right.
see them, go beyond what someone told me, go beyond what was in the
Mhm.
jacket. Not that I dismiss it or don't believe it, but get to the human part of who they were. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that helped me to dispel a lot of my preconceived notions.
Yeah.
Me looking at them as a human being. Okay, he did it. All right, that's what you did. So do you either you want to talk about it and you want to do something about it, or I need to move on and not
Mm-hmm.
and not allow that, because I kept saying to myself, what am I supposed to learn on this floor? What will I learn on
Mm-hmm.
this floor? And what
Mhm.
I learned was more
A
about
lot.
myself. What I learned on that floor was more about myself than them. I was not a victim because I went on that floor as a victim of trauma. By
Right.
after leaving that floor and transitioning into being a counselor, I started to understand, you know what? People want to present that what they want you to see, and you need to dig deeper than that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that definitely it helped me probably more so than it helped them because I didn't take it personal. I stopped.
Right, because you did the work inside of you to not react
Mhm.
immediately in a fearful way, because yeah, it would make sense if you did, but instead you dug deep in yourself to look beyond the surface.
Listen, and I would be on that floor in stilettos and tight skirts, and I got a big one. So you should know before I took Shahada. And so
Yeah.
I had to let them know this is not a joke, because you know what I mean? Like, I'm here, I'm fair, but I'm firm, and we're not gonna play with this thing. Either
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be here because it meant my safety or my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stopped
On
being a
on
stiletto.
on a totally different note. So I didn't know that Africa's name wasn't originally Africa, but you know what it made me think about, and this is like not the same thing, but it's kind of like in the opposite way. So there's an island off of Greece called the island of Lesbos. Okay.
I heard of that.
Yeah, you heard of that, right?
Yes.
So guess what? They tried. So guess that's where the name lesbian came from. Okay.
Really?
So lesbians, because they were like excluded from gays, so like gay women would feel disenfranchised by the gay men because like
Yes.
not gay men, but patriarchy in general says that women can't be that way. So like, you know, they haven't found the right man yet. So they wanted their own name. So they were like, we're going to take it from the island of Lesbos. I don't know, because something about Greek mythology, whatever. Do you know the people of Lesbos in 2018 were trying to sue the lesbians to get their name back? And it's like, who are you going to sue? Who are you going to sue? Because you can't sue all the lesbians. They didn't trademark it.
Right.
They were done with it. But
Now that's hilarious.
Right.
That's hilarious.
That is too.
Needless to say, they didn't
That is
succeed.
hilarious.
You know, so I just thought that was funny.
But you know what? I just want to say, like, because I was just, and also I wanted to point out, like, what Asia, I take my friendships personal too. Friends that I've had for years and years and years. Like, if I say you are my friend, that means I'm going to walk through the mud with you. Even if we got a fight, you beat me up, I beat you up, whatever, put you in a headlock. It doesn't make a difference. We are in this together every single day. Every single day. And me and Oscar, we talk every single morning. And just it's like that's the prompt our day, and give us each other words of encouragement and stuff like that, and just grace I see grace.
Because I think it's important too that we check each other. I think it's important that we do some checks and balances, because sometimes even as clinicians, all of us, I think we might see it one way and not understand that there are other perceptions of what's going on. I also think too, as people that are in recovery, sometimes our stinking thinking creep back in when we least expect it, and we believe that it's something else when it's you. Listen, for 9 years, I have been thinking it ain't me, and I realize, because I say this to people often, it takes 2 hands to clap. What do you mean it ain't you?
That's right.
Stop for step work. That's why you take step work over and over again. You never stop.
Yep. It's a repetitive program.
But because you've changed, you be thinking, oh no, that's not my
that part. Not that
it couldn't be. Or the whole thing, my side of the street is clean, so purposely cleaning up your side of the street, okay?
Yes.
Now, but like literally doing that in a way where you're almost manipulating the situation where your side of the street looks clean. Okay, that's not a clean side of the street. I'm sorry. Like if you manipulated that into appearances because you chose not to do X, Y, or Z, but you did the other little things, well, your side isn't that clean anyway. And if you're trying to make his side or their side of the street look dirty, because I've done that too, then yeah, it's crazy.
And then you put the dirt in the backyard. Like, look.
Yep,
like,
exactly. It's still there. You just can't see it.
But there is an author who is one of my favorite authors, and we were talking about this earlier. Her name is Byron Katie. Okay. And Byron Katie wrote this book, and basically it challenges you to question what you see and what you think. And it was a really good book because it was about her life. It was about her. It was a story about her life and her thinking. And one of the examples she gave was like, you know how you see somebody across the street and you know them and you wave to them and they don't wave back and you automatically think, I know they're not dissing me. I know they're not disrespecting me. When all while they might not have had on their prescription glasses and just can't even see across the street. Or maybe they looking at their phone or they distracted with something else. But again, the things that we tell ourselves, reframing those things. When I walk in a room, I no longer take it personal if somebody stops talking. You know how you walk in a room and you know that they're talking about you. And when they stop talking, I no longer take that personal because that's your stuff. Me neither. You know what I mean? It must be something about me that you find fascinating that you need the whole court about.
Just
Yep. And also I like to see, guess what other people are thinking is none of my business. And I really probably wouldn't want to know what they're thinking because I might think some stuff or say some stuff that I don't necessarily really feel or mean, but if I'm mad, so I really just don't want to hear it, because at the end of the day, it's not my business for a reason, you know? So.
Right. And you know what I tell folks? If somebody shoot an arrow at me and it missed me, don't pick it up and stab me with it, because it missed me for a reason. In other words, if I didn't hear it, you ain't got to bring it to me, because it ain't none of my business.
That's right.
But my question always is, well, what did you say? Because I'm sorry, it's no way that any one of these ladies on this conversation, if somebody was coming to me and bringing gossip, I want to say, and why, you know, I'm going to check you like right then and there. If I'm bringing you a conversation, because I'm telling you what I said, to check them. And I think we fall into those traps. Like I'll never forget. This was when I was a supervisor at NHS, you know, some years ago, and they started gossiping about one of my friends. I said, listen, I said, I don't know what your experience was. I said, but that's my girl. And everybody got quiet, and they looking at me, and I'm like, listen, because at the end of the day, she wasn't really doing her job, but that wasn't your job to say anything.
Right.
The only person that was me.
How about Robin? How about Robinelle? Tell them the story about that.
We already an hour and a half. We already hour and a half in.
Yeah, she was as clueless as anything. But I never forget. I came upstairs. I was like, hey, you know, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm late for my supervision. You know, I had to go get my girlfriend's karaoke machine, because I brought her karaoke machine to a drug and alcohol facility. She will say that's not an excuse. And I looked at her like this. She was like, don't talk to me like that. We just not doing that. And I didn't have to say anything. Like sometimes people always think that you got to go back and forth and yell and fight. And sometimes we're not doing disrespect.
Period.
And she never disrespected me ever again. Ever again.
And you bringing something to their facility to help their clients. It's crazy.
Yeah, I just, you know, and so my thing is, be authentically you. I'm telling you, you'll be so much happier too. And when I say authentically you, I'm talking about getting rid of all of, well, not all of them, because you can't, it's impossible, but checking those ideas that you have about this.
Yes.
Is that really you?
Is that subconscious thought? And again, addressing it, because literally I cannot, and this is why a lot of people don't change, is because 90% of 90% of what drives your behavior is the subconscious. I cannot stress that enough. People really, it's very easy to get lulled into the belief that we are thinking about what we're doing, when 90% of the time we're not, because that's science. We're just not, unless we literally say, why am I doing this 1,000 times a day? But like that question is really important. Why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this way? And stopping, because there is literally an autopilot in our body, and it's called the subconscious thought.
Yeah, because at one point in time, I used to be aggressive, and I was aggressive. And I'm like, but I don't want to be aggressive. I wanted to be assertive. But I thought that aggression was assertiveness. And I'm like, no, that's not who I want to be. I want to be assertive. I want to be kind. I want to be this. I want to be that. I want to be a teacher. I want to be someone that people can come to and talk to. Those are that's the attributes that I want. So I worked at it. So every day I would ask myself, like, am I really being this way? Every single day. Until it started becoming second nature, that when people call, you know, and Essie will tell you, whenever she called me, in general, usually I answer the phone. Hey, what's going on? You busy? No, I could be doing something. Like, no, I'm not busy. You got my undivided attention. Karen saying, what? Got my attention.
Yep.
What's up? You know, and I think that's important, to be there for people when they need you. You know, if I can't be with you at your worst, I shouldn't. I don't get to be there with you at your best.
At your best. That's right.
That's right.
But I also think it's important that we know when to unplug. Like, we continue to go. Yeah, we continue to move on. And we are trained as women, all of us, to power through it. We are trained to power through things. And sometimes you got to just pause it. Because here's the thing. When you're tired, when you're juggling a family, or you working a job or going to school, sometimes reasoning goes out the window. Your ability to process something in a reasonable manner, it goes out the window, you know, because you got a lot of other stuff that you're contending with. So I'm learning, you know, as a clinician, as a helper, as whatever hat I'm wearing that day, I have to take care of me. because I'm so conditioned to putting everything and everyone before me. So I'm taking care of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we all were like that at some point.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, but
But we
it's
also
for,
need friends who will remind us of that. Because one of my favorite stories about Za is like when the first time I said I couldn't do something. I think when she wanted to go to karaoke and or something, I said I can't. And and I was about to say because, and she says to me, "You don't need to have an explanation."
Oh yeah, I
And
like
I
what she
was
said.
like, "Oh my god, that's what my therapist would say." I'm like, "Oh wait, she's a therapist." But I tell that story to my clients because a lot of times they have poor boundaries, and it's not even like you could have the greatest friends who all understand boundaries and still overdo it sometimes, and that's why it's important to unplug, like Asia said. But I think that also it's like picking those people who will be fine when you unplug,
Yeah.
and instead of people who are like, not at a point in their life.
mhm. I call it my tribe. I have
Mhm.
handpicked my tribe, and we have every right. We have every right to handpick our tribe.
I'm
You know,
glad. I was
Yes, I like that.
sometimes we inherit people, we inherit relationships,
We inherit
circumstances.
like puppies. Look at that puppy.
Oh, I saw him in the back. I saw him
Yes,
in the back when you first
yes,
got on.
yes.
So her name is Olivia Benson, and
Oh, okay,
she's my lady cop from
okay.
Law and
Okay.
Order SVU. She's in charge. She keeps the she keeps the stalkers out.
Okay. Talking.
yeah. So
So that's
I
basically all I have on this subject.
yeah, and I just want to end it with, Los Buenos Aires says, reflect, reflect, reflect on his word, reflect on his, like, and it's for a reason that he's telling you to reflect on stuff, because again, if you just operating, because your brain is a computer and it's just an operation, it had made connections, oh shoot, I forgot, we should have talked about connections and how to brain form connections because that.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant to say. That earlier I should have drawn into that because that's what I was meaning to do when I was talking about um, the gazelles and survival and how we connect certain behaviors. Yeah. Anyway, darn it.
Yeah, no, but it's okay. It'll be other days. But basically, your brain forms connections and things like that, and they develop patterns, and you just start operating in those same patterns, and you got to ask yourself questions, so reflect, 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 reflect. That's where and relying on Los Buenos Aires where you get your free will from, because you stop basically, because what it's doing is, this is how it was explained to me, is that when you become a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you start thinking about what he says in the Quran, what happens is you stop looking to other people to tell you who you are.
Mm.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
agree with that.
you stop. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't kill, don't steal, don't do this. You start looking to him to inform you of how you should be. Now your personality is your personality because that's your personality. But when you put yourself and you start reflecting on the Quran, all the other stuff you unplug from the world
Hmm.
and become who you really are and who you I feel like that's who you are meant to be when you came out the womb. That how he fashioned you is when you start looking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For who
You know what's so amazing when you say that? I draw a diagram for people a lot because in the spiritual sense, I believe that if I'm not acting on my subconscious fears, then I have to be living in faith. And to me, living in faith is living in God. Okay, so like if you're living in faith and you're living in God and you trust God's will and you stop living on your own will and making these decisions that aren't good for you, which is really your subconscious fears and stuff, then you are the person that God meant you to be, just exactly like you were saying. And I always feel like it's a timeline that when you come into this world, like if you looked at it like a test, and then who am I going to be at the end of this test or whatever you might want to call it? Am I going to be the person that I was meant to be? And that challenge is to live in faith. And if you're living in fear, it's the total opposite, and you will never be everything that you were just saying. Like you were saying, I don't know, I just really, that resonated with me because
But do you
and,
think, Karen, that first you got to recognize the disruption?
oh yes, because
First,
otherwise
you have to recognize what the disruption was.
Yeah, and everything starts with admission.
You know, you recognize what the disrupt, but a lot of times, sister, and we know people in recovery, they don't even know what the disruption is. What got me derailed and got me where I am? They just think, okay, it's the drugs. Nope. There is something a little deeper, dig a little deeper than that. There was a disruption in your life that had an impact on your life that made you start making certain decisions. Chain reaction.
Made you start trying to control everything. Like if you
Yes.
look at addiction, and it's like the guy I told you about that was in my couple session. He was literally like, "Well, I don't want to try something unless I know that I'm going to succeed at it. I'm afraid of not. All human beings are afraid of that. We're all afraid of addiction, but the addict." That's just a symptom. Other people have different symptoms, but the symptom of addiction is the ultimate control freak behavior. Because literally, when we decided, I used to want to control everything. So if somebody was saying something I didn't like, well, guess what? I was going to shut your mouth for you because I was going to control it. Okay. I want to control the outcome of everything. So I'm not going to let myself be hurt. So I'm going to close down, not have friends, not have relationships. But at the end of the day, you can't control everybody. But guess what you can do? You can feed your brain a drug or a drink, and it changes everything on that. You can't control everything on the outside, but you're feeling all right on the inside. And that's where letting go. And to me, you're absolutely right. If you don't find the disruption that has led to your inability to live, to live in faith and not that kind of fear.
And one of the things that Doc, you always say, you always talk about this higher level of surrender. We've been talking about this for years.
Yeah,
higher level of surrender. And like Zai was saying, when you begin to rely on the loss of Panawata Isla or the God of your understanding, when you begin to identify that there is something much bigger than you that's in force,
that's how you know you're getting there.
Exactly. But it also helps you to stabilize that higher level of surrender, because you can reach it, but can you keep it stable? You know,
it's funny you brought that up. My therapist brought that up. I had my session today with my therapist, and she was talking to me about the imposter syndrome.
Oh,
she said that to me, that maybe she said to me, and I'm not afraid to say this. I don't care. My life.
We've talked about this. I got it too, but go on.
My life is an open book, And she was like, "Well, you're such an overachiever," and we got the same credentials, and the same doctorate degree, the exact same one. And she was like, "Well, but do you believe?" And I was looking at this lady like, who's she talking about? Who's she talking to? Wait, what you trying to say? Do I believe I'm living the dream? Hold on, I'm living the dream.
Can I be transparent with my sister?
Absolutely.
You do not.
Of course not.
You do, but guess what?
But
it's not. But hear what I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead.
You definitely got the credentials, but for whatever reason, you don't think you belong in that room, and you belong in that room. And I know you belong in that room because everybody you touched in that place that we were all in at one point in time, you've had an impact on their life, and they went back to school and got a degree. I had no degree when I met you. You know this. I wasn't even in school when I met you.
Right.
I did not know. I didn't have no idea what my clinical style would even look like. And I'm saying that to say you are qualified. Right. But somewhere in the back of our minds, and I'm not even talking about from the formal education part of it.
Right.
I am speaking about what is naturally and organic.
Yes, right.
And when you start to believe, that I belong here, because I question that too. I work in a situation where I am dealing with city lawyers all day talking about how we're going to make millions of people's lives better. Me writing policy for hundreds and thousands of people. And every day I wake up, I be thinking, no, let me say this. For the first 5 months, I thought, I don't belong here. I can't do this. And then let me tell you how law hooked it up, because this is what he do. When you take that one step toward him, he gonna take several steps towards you. So I'm thinking, I don't know nothing about policy. I can't talk with these big lawyers, these big dogs. How about my capstone? All it was about was policy. So when the rubber meet the road, you're going to discover that the tools that you thought you didn't have to do the job will smack you across the face, and you're gonna be like, oh,
Right. I had them all along. That came from us talking about me failing and having test anxiety and failing my CAADC several times. That's where that came from when she was talking about switch. Because I keep saying stuff like the NA people taught me how to say, and like I picked up from the meetings. I'm so smart, I'm stupid. I kept saying, well, you know me, I'm so smart. You know, I'm just on any given day, you know, stuff like that. So,
and I think that there's certain principles that we got to take away from NA as recovering people that are in recovery. There's certain things I take away, but there's just certain things I'm not messing with.
Yes,
leave it there because that's who I used to be. The person I used to be 6 months ago, I'm not that little girl no more.
Not even yesterday.
You know what I mean?
Not even yesterday. There's been some growth since yesterday. Okay.
You know what I mean? And we have to take a moment to recognize that and celebrate that and just be in that moment. We be so busy plotting on what's next, what I got to do next.
Yes.
Done. And we never take a moment to just be. We never take a moment to be.
You better share that.
Guilty. But you know what? And I've learned too. And I think I started noticing it when I met you, Asia, that the reason why I do so much is that I don't have to. I know. I mean, I always knew this, but now I really know this. That it's so I won't have to sit with myself and really, like, do you really believe all this stuff that you know? Because sometimes my histrionic side will show out, and I'll be like, yeah, because I'm the best thing walking. But then I'll be talking to them, and I'll be like, I don't think I'm like, how did I help them? They're like, I don't see how that happened. Like, what? This don't make no sense. Of course, my closest companion noticed about me. People on the outside, they'd be like, oh, she's so confident. I'll be with them like, how did I help that person? I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't see how like that worked out. But it allows me just doing stuff, allows me not to have to sit with the fact that it's just certain things that I don't believe that I am capable of, even though I'm doing it.
Right. Yeah.
That's that imposter syndrome. But I went to a seminar and I shared this once before with the woman who wrote Eat, Love, Pray. And one of the things that we talked about was just talking to ourselves very loving. Like, you know what I mean? If you got to write yourself a love letter every day, just know that you deserve that. You know what I mean? A lot of times we don't even know that we deserve just somebody to be loving or to hear that loving voice inside our head, because you keep talking about how 90%, is the subconscious. Why can't we rewire the subconscious? Huh?
We can.
You can.
And the only way to do that is to be aware of the subconscious negative thoughts and replace them consciously with positive thoughts. But that's what
you need consistently.
Consistently.
I need to go back to my my little not flashcard. I need to go back to my stickies. Have stickies around the house with like affirmations and stuff, because they're really helping. I feel like because I got away from that, like I don't know, I'd be razzle-dazzle. I don't know.
And I think that people could say what they say about you and be gracious about it, but believe it, because everybody ain't lying. You know what I'm saying? When people say how amazing, you know what I mean? When people tell you how amazing you are, when people tell you how you've impacted their lives, you need to embrace it, because we're not going to knock everything out the park. You know what I'm saying? And on those instances where we actually knock it out the park, we got to celebrate that, because this is a hard work that we do. This is a hard lifestyle that all of us have chosen. When you sit and listen to people's stuff and you have to try to self-regulate so that your own stuff don't pop out on the screen while you're talking to a client. So,
and I agree, but what I'm bad on, I'm contending with, is just that when you have a father who called you stupid every single day, as many times as he can say it in a day, for 9 years, it's so hard to, and I feel like now in my life I've overcompensated for that.
Yeah, that's tough.
By just continue to get degrees. That's why I was like, what? I'm not getting my doctorate. I said, because at first I was like, I'm gonna go get my doctorate. I'm like, I don't even want it. It was just been me overcompensating. I don't even want it.
And then your success is how you measure it. You're like, my success, if I stopped here, I don't give a damn and I gotta say it this way, what anybody thinks about me. Do you know why? Because at this juncture, I value my happiness and my peace. I value where I am after you've suffered catastrophic illness and chronic illness. You know what I mean? If you've ever had that experience, and most of us have, you can't worry about what other people think, because once the lights go out, the lights go out. So my mindset is whatever I decide that is best for me, because I've spent most of my adult life being preoccupied with what's best for other people and exhausting my soul. So I'm not doing that no more. I have
This is my favorite thing, sis. This is my favorite thing. I am enough.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
who? For who? For
But
me.
but that's not
I
even my
am
fear.
enough for me right this very moment. Not you, not you, not you, well, not you. I am enough for me. Right. Thank you for trying to push me, wanting more for me, but I'm okay. I'm enough. When are you enough?
And can I
No,
say
but
this?
it's not really. But it's
Your
not really.
journey, sister, your journey is your journey. Listen, and we still, because I don't know, Karen, if you know what the cutter is, the cutter of a law. The cutter is just basically God's will. So,
Okay.
you know, so and I want to just clarify, because I always want to include you in what we're talking about. And you probably already know that anyway from being with Zai. So the reason I wanted to define that is because whatever Allah, wherever he wants us to go, wherever his will is, because we plan, but Allah plan, and Allah knows best, you know, and that's what we say, and that's what we believe. So I could be planning all day. It's a lot of directions I thought I was going to go in, and there's a lot of people I thought I would stay connected to, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, yeah, check this out. You know what I mean? And they were just a meantime before I got to the real, whatever that real thing looked like and that aligned with my spiritual principles, whatever Allah had for me. So sometimes it could be a situation or people that are just a meantime. You know what I mean? And I got a lot. I've had a lot of those, and I realized talking to my neighbor today, my circle's so small I could hug myself twice. And that's okay, and I'm okay with that, because I know what it's like to be with the cool kids, thinking that they the cool kids, and realizing that they not the cool kids, they the crazy kids, and I need to.
And I used to be one, and I used to be right with them.
No, sister, let me tell you something.
Woo.
You were not you and I talked about this before. People pleasing. I think I'm guilty of that crime as well. And I think once we started to realize that, listen, we ain't gotta do that no more. You know what I'm saying? Like we stand on our own merits.
That's right.
And who we are, our own authenticity, and we ain't gotta do that no more. So I think once you begin to realize, listen, I ain't gotta do that no more. I don't care about none of that. You know, we just better off, and we safeguard our people.
The authenticity can seep out. It'll seep out.
I was going to say that, you know, this thing about trauma drive and performance-based and imposter syndrome and all of those things, they kind of all go to their imposter syndrome is somewhat different than in the trauma drive thing, but they're both propelling each other, you know. And I feel like sometimes imposter syndrome can happen even if you are in the right place in your life, but also like if you're in high trauma drive mode and you're really trying to, no matter what, you're not imposter, you belong where you belong, but in the attempt to get somewhere to prove to ourselves that we're enough, you know, it can lead us in a misdirection or spinning our wheels. Like I like what Asia said when you said you're looking for peace now, you know, and a peace in your life. So if what your goals are more aligned with what it's going to be for, like, I just know in my own life, like I was always working 2 jobs and doing like way too much. And a lot of it was so I didn't have to sit with my own self. And I mean, I literally went for the first 3 to 4 years of my recovery, going to school, working 2 jobs, and literally talking about how I'm going to get this, this, and this, and then I'll feel better once I get this degree or do that. And ultimately, I got to a place where in my life, and I said this a couple of years ago, all I want to do is be a therapist in a way that my hair doesn't fall out. Because at the consortium, I had alopecia areata, which Zah discovered by standing over me and was like, "What's happening to the top of your head?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She took a picture of it. I had a bald circle, literally alopecia areata. Okay. And I said to myself, what do I want out of life? I love running groups, but I don't want a caseload. I love
working in this capacity, but not in that capacity. And so I did a contract with Job Corps. I don't have a caseload. I work with students. I don't love it like I love some real addicts, like I call, you know, in my mind. But I'm like, but I found a way to do that. I did fee for service for the Wedge, just doing groups. No, now I'm working for Zaz practice. I see a couple there, just got a new client, but I'm working the way that works for me.
Yeah,
that's right.
So that I
Me
can
too.
have peace. And
Me
all I
too.
want to be able to do is pay my bills, make sure there's enough for somebody to bury me, you know? And
But the truth is, when
but
you do what you love,
but that's my point.
you can make money. When you figure out what it is that you love, you can make money. Listen. I literally chill most of my day, and I know that sounds really crazy. Now that school has calmed down, I literally chill. I work at my own pace. I have this type of job, especially with the city, where I can work at my own pace. My core hours are from 10 to 3. I don't have a huge caseload with Zai's practice as of yet, but I got a consistent caseload. And I don't want to see more than 10 people, because when I want to go on vacation, I don't need nobody calling me saying, hey, I'm in crisis. Hey,
Right.
well, I need you to reach out to my colleague, Zafir, and get off my line with this nonsense. Because a lot of times, their emergency is really not an emergency.
Don't tell them to call me.
But I think the thing is that the biggest thing is I want to do what I love, and I believe that God put it in my heart to work in the capacity that I work in. It makes me full. It makes me feel joy. I could run a group and not get paid for weeks at the Wedge. When I was running groups at night, I just couldn't wait to get from Job Corps to there. Not that I don't like Job Corps, but like I just loved running that group twice a week. You could not pay me, I'd be fine, but paying me helps pay my bills. So my whole point is I want peace. I want fulfillment. I want to believe that feel like I'm doing God's plan for me. And at the end of the day, enough is plenty. I just need enough to live and feel fulfilled. And I'm blessed because I don't have to provide for kids. I can live a simple life. That's all I want. And to me, that's the biggest achievement for me at this point. I don't know.
Karin, I want to say this. I feel extremely blessed, and I feel like this. When I was in the world, in the life, I'm gonna call it that. Mm-hmm. I know that I was a millionaire at least once. I know this in my life. And I would buy a lot of stuff and I was empty.
Yeah.
And at that time, I wasn't even using drugs. When I realized that the stuff wasn't filling up the hole, drugs became the resort. My next resort. Because the stuff that I was buying and the things that I was doing for other people, it wasn't filling me up.
Yep.
And I feel like no matter what my journey was, it was always spiritual. Even if I was saying, even if I wasn't calling God Allah, I was still always calling on God. And Felicia, that I would be like, let me get God's mind on the matter, and I'll get back to you. And I had to shed my old self. Yeah. I had to shed my old thinking. I had to shed putting value in stuff. I mean, I still like nice stuff, but I had to shed that because I made things my God. I made things, and people my God and goddesses. And I elevated the people more than I elevated God. And I feel like when we do that, there are definitely some consequences for that. And I experienced those consequences. And me and my husband were talking about this the other day, and I was saying, my rock bottom was not like other people's rock bottom. My rock bottom was something so simplistic as not being able to do something for my children the next day because I was out all night doing my thing, and that devastated me that I could not do that, what I needed to do for my children, because they thought I was in the bed dead and put a mirror up under my nose. And to know that they did that was devastating for me. That was a devastating moment. And I realized for me, I had to shed who people told me I was so I could find out who I really am.
That's right.
So that's my story.
Other people, that's a really good point, Asia, because a lot of our inner dialogue and our subconscious thought and the connection made in our head are really other people's narrative about us. We can write our story. We have been fed a narrative most of our lives, and especially when we're really young. That narrative that we get fed from, especially between 0 and 6,
becomes
others' esteem. You know how I say that?
right. Yes, exactly. And it becomes our belief about ourselves. And the only way to change that is to talk to yourself differently. But others' esteem, like as Za calls it, is so important because we are social animals. You need people who are going to support the help, the shedding, the old you that isn't you, the you that other people told you you were, to become the you that you are. I
need
love
to trademark. I need to trademark that. I need to trademark that because somebody's going to use it. Watch, you're going to start hearing it like others' esteem. Get off my word.
But I also think too, in reference to that, you attract what you are, and once you begin to shed, then your tribe want to manifest. My tribe has manifest in various times. Whatever stage I was at, that tribe was present, because I attracted that tribe. I get to the next level, that tribe was present because I attracted what I was becoming, and I began to attract what I'm becoming. I sit across the table from ballers. I mean, ballers that I see every day on the news, you know, talking to little old me who climbed down off of a stripper pole in 1990, 1999.
Oh my God, I climbed down off the stripper pole in like 2006. Listen, I know all about it.
Listen,
okay.
So some days when I am thinking about the beginning to where I am now, I realize I am so proud of myself. I am so proud of myself, and we gotta be able to say that out loud. I am proud of who I became, and guess what? I'm very transparent too. I tell my story all the time. When I am talking to some of the population that I serve, I'm talking about people that are in treatment and co-occurring. When these women go out there, and we talked about this too, and they selling their bodies, and they're gonna do it anyway. So you know what? We're gonna turn this into a money-making venture. You cannot come back and not have enough money to pay your rent because that's hustling backwards. So. You know, and I use that to build them up. And most people probably be like, how do you use that to build them up? Because when folks got money in their pocket, they can think a little clearer, so to speak. They can think a little clearer. They can create a plan, and they can now establish some goals.
But you know what? And I don't know if anybody ever saw it. I think I sent it to Karin once. It was this comedian where she had to help people who were prostitutes build a resume.
Oh yes! Oh my God, whole school.
Yep. Yes. And my thing is, when you do that, you know, building, even though it was about prostitution, but they changed it and reframed it, it still builds people's self-esteem.
Yes.
And that's the part that's needed to move forward. Yeah. It's the part that needs for. But you know what? Guess what? I have to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Work tonight. And I love you to be delayed. Okay. But
I'm glad we had this time together. Assalamu alaikum. It has been my pleasure, Karin. It's always a thrill and a pleasure. And we should do this again. Sister,
nice to meet you, Karin.
Yes, because she's good at ADD too. So
Doc B, always a pleasure, always a thrill. I'm loving the garments. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum.